I'm Dominic Cruz, UFC bantamweight contender, and you're listening to the Action Sports Show.
You're on, guys.
All right, folks, welcome back to the Action Sports Show, powered by Toyota Escondido Action Sports. Hey, while you're on our website, we'd like to ask you to go follow us on all of our social media at TE Action Sports. That's at TE Action Sports. And Rick, we got our first great guest on the show here, Hans Molenkamp. I don't know your exact title at Monster Energy, but you're in charge of the whole MMA operations with Monster Energy. You've been around action sports for so long, moto, branding, media. I mean, just a legend in your own time.
Yeah. And he just let us know that he started out was just doing like not casual, but you were doing photography of MMA and through the UFC.
I understand, like world-class photographer. So first of all, welcome on the show.
Thank you guys, man. I'm stoked to be here right now. This is pretty cool.
Not bad, huh?
Yeah.
As I drink my Monster.
I dig it.
Yeah.
She's drinking her Monster.
She is. Good girl. Good girl.
So I checked out your website before you came today, and the photography is amazing. Amazing. And you do a lot of different types of photography as well, right?
I do, yeah. I started shooting photos years ago. I worked for a company called XYZ Clothing, and it was Danny Way's company, and he basically handed me a camera and told me to go talk to Grant Britton and learn how to shoot, because he didn't want to pay for photos anymore. So I learned how to shoot, and I shot all the products. So I started shooting action, photography back when we used film at that time, and just kind of kept doing it.
Now, what were you doing for XYZ to start with?
Same thing. I started off as a surf team manager, and then from there, I worked in and started doing the skate team, and then I started doing the marketing, and then I started doing some of the artwork, and then kind of just integrated into all the marketing stuff.
What a bunch of folks to start out with, too, huh?
Yeah,
Right?
I mean, and I've known Danny for a long time, and he's given a lot of people the start in the industry, and he's a good dude, and he's one of the guys that I 100% credit for helping me get in this position. He got me my first industry job right out of working at a surf shop.
So were you a San Diego boy growing up?
Yeah, born and raised in Oceanside.
There we go.
Yeah, so I'm still here.
Still there.
Love it.
Fellow Oceanside resident.
Right on. See, that's the thing. I love this place. I'll never leave it.
Yep.
And you got involved in the action sports industry in 1993?
Yeah, working at the shops.
Wow.
I went to school. I went to San Diego State, and then went to Cal State San Marcos when it first opened up, and basically was working at the shop and worked behind the counter, gripping skateboards and selling surfboards. And then Danny, offered me the position, just like a small position to come in. And I remember I was like, I don't know how I'm going to pay for everything, but I don't care. I'm going to do it. This is my opportunity. And I jumped in there, and then whatever they threw at me, I did.
When
and
you know, you know.
Yeah, which we were just talking, and Jason Ellis was one of their first athletes they had sponsored, which is my teammate at IMG Motorsports.
Yeah, Jason came over from Australia, and he was in the first clothing catalog we ever did. And it's cool to see Jason go through so many stages and then wind up where he's at right now. Because I remember when he first started training, I gave him gloves and I hooked him up with a bunch of stuff, and he was so pumped on it. And the next thing you know, he's like, hey, I got this thing called Ellis Mania. Can you hook me up with some gloves for the guys to fight? And I thought about him like, what are you doing, dude? But then at the same time, it's Jason Ellis. So I'm like, okay, more than likely he's going to be successful at it, even though on paper this sounds completely absurd. I'll do it. And we did. And we sponsored his events for 3 or 4 events, and it was an awesome thing. And it was great just to see him do so well on radio and make that transition from being an athlete to doing something outside, which is great.
So were you with Danny when he built the ramp out at Point X Camp?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So I was doing the motorcycle club, and my kids were out there and stuff like that. I remember meeting Jason. He was always hungover, and he would make he would make it across the gap 1 out of 10 times. And Danny was there doing the different stuff, and I went up to talk to him, and it freaked me out. It didn't freak me out, but surprised me. So I get up there and I go to talk to Danny for a few minutes. He goes, I don't mean to be rude, but I can't stay here. And I'm like, what do you mean? He goes, I'm afraid of heights. I got to go. And then he just, boom, it takes off down the way, and it just, that was so progressive at that point. And then it was kind of cool because Point X was so raw at that point.
Oh yeah. I mean, I remember so before that he had built he built the ramp in Carlsbad. I don't know if you ever saw that when he jumped in, when he literally dropped in from a helicopter into that ramp and got the cover. And then he built another one at the Hard Rock in Las Vegas. Right. And that was, the first time I ever actually stood up on top of the deck, and that was smaller than one at Point X. Yeah. And I wouldn't even butt slide down that thing. It was too scary.
Exactly.
And like to think about like what he's doing at this level, he just broke the world record again. You know, and it's just amazing. Like the guy is still like he is one of the most amazing athletes I've ever seen in my entire life.
But just so chill. But just so chill.
Yeah.
When you talk to him, you wouldn't think he's so edgy.
No.
You know, but man, does that guy have a huge set on him?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So now you made. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
And then in 2000, you worked for Osiris, right?
Yeah. So after XYZ, I did a little stint at Danny's brother's company, DC, and then from there I moved on to Osiris Shoes, which is another skate shoe company in the industry, and I've been there since 2000. I still work with Osiris currently to this day, and it's an interesting experience because it's like footwear at that time was so different. You know, it was skateboarding footwear, and it was sold just in shops, and you know, it was really, you know, like an elite thing like that was just for skateboarders and people in action sports. And then
right.
you know, it started getting integrated with motocross and started getting integrated with surfing and all kinds of different stuff. And then the big box retailers started coming through and brought a lot of money to the action sports world. So we started being able to pay athletes a lot more, which was cool. You know, it was finally give back, you know, to where, these guys weren't getting paid as much. And it was cool to see the transition of that too. To see these guys actually get paid real money.
Yeah.
You know?
And now you're MMA manager for Monster Energy. What does that exactly mean? Walk us through what your job entails. I'm sure you have some great stories. I'm sure you travel a ton.
Yeah.
Walk us through what that means.
Okay, so about 4.5 years ago, Cody Dresser, who worked with me at Osiris, he was our snowboard team manager, approached me, and he is the director of all action sports at Monster Energy. He approached me and said, "Hey, look, we're looking at getting into this category, which is MMA. You know, we want to start it small. We want to see where it goes. You know, and you know, kind of just make it small and organic and see what we do. Can you help us with this? Because Cody and I have been friends forever, and he trained with me, and he knew my involvement in MMA and being in the scene for a long time, and he knew that I could help build the team. So I basically went out and I hired Dominic Cruz, and I hired Michael Chandler right off the bat.
Were you always a fan of MMA? Did you know who to hire?
Yeah, because I mean, I had started a company. Mm-hmm. I had just on the side, I had started a company that made and manufactured cages, and we make gloves, and we make everything that has anything to do with training. So me just doing that at the time, because I personally was training and I personally was competing, I wanted to have something of my own. That's just what I wanted to do. So a lot of the guys, I mean, especially here in San Diego, everyone comes through here. We all train together. I mean, when I first started training back in, I think it was 2001, I was with Brandon Vera, I was with Dean Litzer, I was with like every single person that ever came through San Diego. We all trained at the same place called City Boxing. So I got to meet all these guys, and we all trained together. We all went to competitions together. And
is that down south?
That's in downtown San Diego.
Yeah.
Have you trained there, Rick?
I have not trained there.
You got it.
It was the hub.
I feel like there was a Rick story there somewhere.
Not quite.
It was a hub for everybody, and at that time, the big organization wasn't the UFC; it was Pride.
Right.
So, you know, we were always training to get guys into Pride, and Dean made it to Pride. I flew out to Japan a couple times to corner him out there, and we all became really close. And then I just one day decided I want to start making some equipment. I want to make my own equipment. It was really hard to get stuff that you wanted. So with the connections I had through the footwear industry and just building stuff, I started building my own gloves and building different stuff and outfitting everybody in MMA.
What was the brand of that?
Well, the first brand I had was Throwdown.
Okay.
And Throwdown was our first brand that we built, and we built the cages, and we built out the gyms, and we had the equipment, all that from ground one. It was the first company that ever did that. I sold my interest in that brand and then started Triumph, which is just purely equipment.
Right.
You know, I kind of got over building cages. That was as fun as it sounds like. It wasn't that fun at all, trying to make sure cages got to events and to different gyms on time, because that was
But you know how to build cages.
I do. I could fabricate a cage.
We should turn this set into a cage.
We could. I could
love
chop
that.
the steel
You
and
and
weld it up for
RJ.
you.
There you go.
When
And it
you
was
welcome
fun.
your guest.
That way, when
Step
Dan
into
lips
the
off, you
cage.
can just
That's it.
take him to the cage.
Yep.
Yeah. So, long story short is that I acquired a lot of, athletes through just not only training, but having the company. So when we did the Monster thing, it was really easy for me to reach out to people. And the two people I wanted to reach out first was Michael Chandler and Dominic Cruz, because I feel that those two guys are great representatives of the sport. They're local boys, and they are amazing athletes.
Yeah.
So they signed up on the deal, and we started really small at first, like, hey, just like run the logos, and that's it. That's all you got to do. Pay you. And then from there, it went on to another really close friend of mine, Rampage Jackson. I was like, hey, I would love to get you involved in Monster. Would you want to be involved? And he's like, absolutely. He loved.
Now, didn't
Monster.
he come on in a bigger way from the start?
He did. We brought Rampage on, and it was kind of when we were going, at that point in time, we were actually getting ready to sponsor the Bellator series too. So we brought Rampage on when we were doing that. So at that time we had Rampage, Michael Chandler, and Dominic, and then Dominic got injured. And so really it was just Rampage and Chandler doing Bellator that period, which was like 3 years ago or so. Mm-hmm. And so we were very heavy into just doing, those guys in Bellator. And then we brought in another local guy, Joey Beltran from Oceanside. Mm-hmm. And, we love Joey. He's just such a great guy, and he's such a good representative of sport too. So we brought Joey on, and it was just those four guys, and we just did it, and we did the Bellator thing, and then all of a sudden it steamrolled over, and I got the word that, hey, this is doing really good. What do you think about doing the UFC? And that's when the UFC was actually starting to. They had their own brand called Zions, and they had sold that brand, so they it opened up the category for us, and we jumped in, and we live right now in both spaces, in Bellator and in the UFC, which has never been done.
Yeah, that's
the first time,
and that's okay.
It's okay
to you.
Hey, it's one of those things that I think it's a huge accomplishment for the brand to be able to do something like that, to be involved in the two largest arenas,
But it's slightly different now, because UFC has cleaned everything up. No more logos on the shorts, no more banners, no more this. So sponsoring an athlete is a lot different. Can you still do the things that you used to do in Bellator as far as shorts, banners, and stuff like that?
Yes, in Bellator, they still allow you to have any sponsor you like. I mean, they review it, obviously. There's certain sponsors they're just going to let through, but they allow the guys to go out and seek outside sponsorships to offset, whatever they're getting paid by the organization. The UFC now is 100% Reebok, so it's basically a uniform. You go in there, and if you're gonna be a fighter in the UFC, you're gonna wear a Reebok uniform with your name on it. We are one of the only companies. There's a couple other ones, but we are. I'm just gonna mention our name. That have athletes outside that we have endorsement deals with. So if you watch a fight and you see Ronda Rousey, she's going to wear a Monster logo.
I asked about that, and they said, well, we sponsored the series, so if we say we would like the logo on this athlete, they're still able to do that.
It's for us, we have 11 athletes. That's it. We don't have any more than that. We just have our 11 athletes that, I got lucky enough to be able to cherry pick and go, hey, I want this guy, this guy, this guy, this guy.
This girl.
And that girl, yeah.
Or that girl, yeah.
And the girl, actually.
The girl,
And the girl. And then, put together this amazing team. And they're the ones that I call, like, if you see somebody in the in the UFC cage wearing a Monster logo, they're the best.
And that's why I asked about it, because I said after they made the deal and it's all only Reebok, you saw no one else. But then Ronda came out with a big Monster claw, and I'm like, well, how does this work? And they explained it.
Yeah. So, and then that's the thing. And then, then after, like, this weekend, we've got two fighters. We got Johnny Hendricks and we got Daniel Cormier, and they're both Monster fighters.
Right.
And they'll be running the logo. And trust me, he gets asked all the time, like, wait, hold on, what's going on here? Why do they have that? And the truth is that we do outside deals with those guys.
Well, and also that you guys support the sport. When I was doing the Torque series with Mitch Covington, who you work with over there, we had Mike Jenkins come in from the Traxxas series, and he's like, I don't want anybody else unless they got skin in the game. You know what I mean? And that's where I think UFC and Dana and the Lorenzo and everybody, they're tired of people. They're spending all this money to build this sport, and then people are coming in and jumping on top of it. So with that, Monster obviously has a huge commitment financially wise in the series itself. So adding a logo to the fighters is not a far cry. But if another energy drink company comes in, they're going to give a fighter $10,000 and be on a pay-per-view or on a Fox Sports 1 show. I see where they're going, cut it. So I totally get it and that. But as an athlete, as you know, a lot of these lower guys are doing everything they can to get every little bit, but is it good or bad?
I don't know. It's a toss up because I mean, in one way you clean up the sport. You don't have these. You don't have like the NASCAR shorts, basically they call it. You don't have like a bunch of sponsors that you can't see, and it really dilutes, what they're trying to do and make it.
Stripperpole.com sponsors and all this stuff.
They're trying to. They're really.
Bail bonds.
They want to make these guys professional athletes that are respected amongst the industry outside of just the UFC world, right? And the whole thing is that some guys are going to have to work to achieve that level of success where they could get those bigger sponsors, and some guys just aren't going to get it. But you see it in a lot of the stick and ball sports. It's the same thing. Like not everybody gets those big sponsors, but these guys do. And if you get there, then you're doing something right, and just continue to do it. I mean, it's unfortunate that everyone's going to be able to do it, but that's just what it is.
Did you have any of your logos pulled because you have Triumph, and I'm sure you have some athletes? 100%.
And I dealt with it, and I had sponsored fighters in the UFC for 5 years.
Great question. So you were on both sides.
I mean, I had to pay the UFC. There's a sponsoring fee as a company. We had to pay the UFC to be a part of the UFC. So we paid the organization and we paid the fighters. And our whole thing is we wanted to support the organization. We wanted to support the fighters. We wanted to support the industry. And then when they decided to do this, they gave us the heads up that this was going to happen. And again, like I look at it like this. Well, my brand has been around long enough so that the consumer that knows who we are, they're going to believe in us and they're going to continue to use us. And the fighters are still going to use us outside, when they're training, and that's good enough for me. So I accepted it. A lot of people just literally like that was it. They paid so much money to have a walkout shirt for somebody walk out into the cage with, and that's what they depended on. And those are the companies that are going to be, having some issues because they don't have any other way of branding their brand anymore.
So what marketing do you depend on now with Triumph?
100%. We depend on the athletes utilizing the product when they're training, and the
social media.
Yeah, social media. The UFC and Bellator have been great about doing that. They include us in all that kind of stuff because they understand. They get that part. I mean, it's the fact that we, as everybody else, have to play the game and go, look, we're not going to be on the athlete inside the cage, but that's just the rules. We can't do anything about that.
Well, very, very interesting stuff, and I got a lot more questions for you. Finding out how this whole thing works from both sides, just very, very interesting. Some great fights coming up, too, I'd like to talk about. Johnny Hendricks, stuff like that. So we got to take a break, folks. We'll be right back. The Action Sports Show, powered by Toyota Escondido. Don't go anywhere.
One name you should know, the best place you can go, Toyota of Escondido.
Summertime means savings time. And right now at Toyota of Escondido, you can save more than ever before on over 100 bold and exciting new 2015 Camrys. Drive home a great deal today with huge, sizzling summer savings you can count on.
Toyota of Escondido. Toyota of Escondido.
During this giant, sizzling summer sale, you'll find the year's hottest deals on over 1,000 best-selling Toyotas. Toyota of Escondido has over 12 and a half acres of Toyotas to choose from. Come in today and save.
Toyota of Escondido.
Freeway close where Highway 78 meets Broadway, just east of the 15.
What's up? This is Robbie Madison. You're listening to the Action Sports Show, where all things action sports goes on. Tell your mama I said hello and keep it wide open.
You're on, guys.
All right, folks, welcome back to the Action Sports Show powered by ToyotaEscondido.com. We are having an awesome show here, and we've got Rat Salt going to be joining us in just a little while, but right now we're talking to Hans Molenkamp from Monster Energy and all kinds of interesting conversation of how the whole UFC deal works out. And you were mentioning Johnny Hendricks fighting this weekend.
Yeah, Johnny and Daniel Cormier, both are athletes that are fighting this weekend in Houston.
Not fighting Robbie Lawler.
No.
What's your take on that? How come he gave the rematch but doesn't get the rematch? There's been some controversy in the ads.
I don't know. I mean, I think it's one of those things that, obviously if he wins this fight, he'll get it, but they really wanted him to work for it. And
I
that's
think
what
he
he's
won the
doing.
first fight more dominantly than he lost the second.
Yeah, I know.
Doesn't make sense to me.
No, a lot of matchmaking doesn't make sense sometimes. But again, it's one of those things that like you just got to sit back and you're not going to argue with them, And you know, as a fan, it sucks because you definitely want to see that fight. But as somebody that is working with the organization, I definitely respect their decisions. And I just, I just sit back and go, okay, well, we'll see that fight, hopefully.
Well, it's like people second guess the decision with Ronda when Misha was kind of, promised the third title shot from winning her last fight.
Yeah. And
then their take is kind of like, hey, bad business decision, and you don't want to lose 3 times in a row. And we've seen that fight already. So
we have
give
seen
it some
fight.
time.
In actuality, yeah, it's I think that it should wait.
But what's funny is I watched the replay of Tate Rousey 2. Misha brought it pretty hard, and I didn't even remember that it went that far into the third round, and she put up a heck of a fight. She's come way closer than anyone else on the planet.
100%, but that's the thing though. She has lost multiple times.
Yeah.
So, do you just keep doing that?
Right.
Statistically, it's, but as far as like a stylistic fight, it's great. Everyone wants to see it. You got 2 of the best right there, in every aspect.
Yeah.
In the marketing aspect and also the fighting aspect, but it's like to do it again.
and through history, even in boxing, some of the greats, Hagler, Hearns, they'd fight each other, numerous times, but it was really only like a trilogy.
Yeah.
After that, it doesn't go like to 4 and 5. So
Totally.
Unless you're talking Ali Frazier.
Yeah. Right.
Now you're
Down
talking.
goes Frazier.
See, but that's what everybody wants to get, and stylistically, those guys matched up perfectly. They talk about Bailey and I, the way we raced like that, but not to turn it towards me, but when you watched Frazier just straight in banger, and then you got Ollie who danced around and boxed, and these 2 guys were so tough. I think that's what every fight matchmaker promoter wants.
Yeah.
Those 2 guys hated each other. Behind the scenes they did help each other out, but that's what you're looking for. But are you going to get that? Misha did better in the second one. Has she learned, and now does she keep coming into the ring a little bit more comfortable? But I think Ronda keeps developing and getting better and better. So I agree with you.
This is the thing with Ronda, and I said this. I truly believe this. I think Ronda is one of the best fighters, or if the greatest fighter that's ever lived, for a couple different reasons. First of all, she's an Olympian, right?
Right.
And she's an Olympic level, fighter that trains at that level. So anyone that's seen an Olympian train knows that this is not like the guy that has aspirations of getting the UFC that hasn't done anything at this level yet. But it's a really good fighter that makes it and like has that story. Ronda has.
That's different.
She made
than
it to the
Olympic.
She made it to the Olympics, and because of that, she trains like that, and that's why you consistently see her from her first fight to her last fight just go up. And she trains in a way that no one else trains. And I've seen everybody train, and I've never seen anything like that before.
Right.
And she's consistent about it, and she's amazing at what she does.
Will she retire undefeated like she wants?
I think she will.
Will she fight
I think so,
Cyborg?
too.
That fight has to happen.
I don't think that will happen.
No, I don't think it'll happen either.
I don't think it's going to happen, but I do think she'll retire undefeated, and I think it will be sooner than you think.
All right. So going to John Jones, you had mentioned that you guys were going to sign a contract the day that all that stuff got released on him.
Yep.
So whatever happened with that?
Well, it was until I think it was today that we found out, that, he's going to be coming back pretty soon. But, it's a tough one. It's a lot of fighters get in trouble. A lot of fighters do things. John's gotten in trouble multiple times, and this last one was a big deal. It was a really big deal, and we could not sign somebody that got in trouble like that. And we have a brand uphold, and we didn't want to get involved, and we didn't want to be part. And that's, Reebok had actually cut ties with them too. So we're going to have to see John really work his way back and see what he can do. And no one's just going to give you a sponsorship like that. It's going to be tough for him moving forward. He's one of the best 205ers that's ever lived. We all know that. And he's going to go back in there, and he's going to win fights, and he's going to have great performances. But it's what happens outside the ring that he has to maintain, and he has to continue to maintain.
And how many times have we asked ourselves, oh man, he's got to have learned his lesson this time. He's he's the top guy. He can't let this go away.
I mean, with John, it's one of those things that's quite simple. He just needs to take himself out of the environment that he's in. He just keeps staying in that same environment. I mean, if he really wants to change his life, he needs to move his environment.
Take yourself away from the
because you hear the same thing. It's always his friends. It's always friends. Well, he's around his friends. He's the one who's hanging around doing stuff. Yeah. Just hang out with your family or do something different. Like, this is the thing. You're a professional athlete, and a lot of people look up to you, and you need to make sure you consistently maintain that professional image. And if you don't, you're going to lose sponsors like Reebok, and Monster's not going to sign you. Pretty simple.
Yeah.
Agreed. And I think it's. I mean, I've I raced for Red Bull and I've worked with Monster, and I've got close ties with a lot of friends, Mark and Rodney. We talked about Mitch Covington and stuff like that, and it's great to have enough balls to say no to these superstar athletes. And I've always thought, it's your job to do the right thing, to not be Charlie Sheen, to not, you're not above the law, you're not all that. And even though you can whip anybody's ass when you walk into the ring, you still have to deal with life on a day-to-day basis. And so I commend you guys for not just going, oh, he's the toughest guy, so we got to have him.
Yeah.
Because that doesn't play anymore. It did play in the 80s.
Sure.
Guys, hoodlums and stuff like that got away with a lot of crap.
Well, I mean, look, when he comes back and when he fights, the world's going to watch.
Oh, yeah.
And from a brand perspective, of course you want to be the logo on his shorts because everyone's going to see. But from like an integrity and like just pure like sensible decision, we're not going to do that. We're not going to just feed into the fact that like he's going to have a lot of people watching. We want somebody that's going to represent the brand well and not do something that's going to, we're going to figure out how we're going to explain why we cut him. It's just not going to happen.
Okay, I want to pose a question. Because we can't have logos on shorts, we can't have the different stuff. How much would a guy get for, say, a back tattoo or something?
It's funny.
Is that possible?
If you do remember, a long time ago, people would paint logos.
I know.
on their
That's
back.
what I'm saying.
Kind of like the volleyball players.
Yeah. So, okay, this is to switch gears, and this is with my other company, Triumph. Dean Lidster was fighting in the UFC, and he was like, "Hey, what if I tattooed a logo?" And I was like, "That's just too much, man.
That's over the top.
That's just too much, man." Because, like, you know what? I don't know if I want to sponsor you for that long. You know what I mean? Like, so I mean, if there's a lot of fighters. I think James Irvin had a bad boy tattoo on him, years ago, and he fought.
Imagine that.
I know who does that.
That's weird.
Do you have a bad boy tattoo?
Yeah, he does.
He does.
Oh, you do? Okay. All right. But
I was the guy, but it's a different story.
Okay. So yeah, you could do it. I mean, like, I don't think they're going to try to blur it out during a live pay-per-view fight. But I mean, who's going to do that? You never know. With the current situation right now, with guys, if the price is right, you may see that.
Are they allowed to do those temporary things like you see?
No, you can't do a temporary thing. But how are you going to take off a permanent one?
Right. That's what I'm saying.
And if they walk out, put it this way: if they walk out and they take off their shirt and no one had caught that or whatever, and they have the tattoo, they're going to run it. I mean, like, it just would be really weird for a guy to get a big tattoo of a company on him.
And then maybe they blur all the rest of their fights, but they only got one fight out of that real tattoo.
Right. And trust me, I mean, the organization would not be happy with that, and they'd more than likely say you're not fighting with us anymore.
Yeah.
Because it would. I mean, like, you get away with it one time.
Now you can go to another organization where you could have just worn it on your trunks
Right?
anyway. So
Yeah.
Which was great, by the way. The last, Michael Chandler, and he's getting ready to fight again here shortly. But the last one, you see the big Monster logo and Toyota Escondido on his rear end, and
Oh yeah.
pretty awesome.
Yeah, Chandler represents to the fullest.
Yeah.
And that's, the best thing about that guy. He's the perfect example of an athlete you want to have in the cage and outside the cage, always progressing, always fighting a good fight. And then outside the cage, he's one of the coolest guys, down to earth, well spoken, and I can't say enough good things about the guy.
Yeah.
I love Michael Chandler. I wouldn't be sitting in this chair if it wasn't for Michael Chandler. He's the one who introduced me to you guys, and this is what's so cool about guys like him, because he makes sure that you're taken care of, and he makes sure that that he goes above and beyond, to help people.
Now, where do you see the sport going as a whole, and as it's evolved, and you see some organizations getting sopped up by other ones? You have the main two, Bellator and UFC. How do you see that coexisting and where we're going?
Okay, so I see two total. You have the same exact thing going on. They're fighting, right, in a cage. But you have two different formats now. You have Bellator, which is, taking the traditional format, and they're also including kickboxing. If you guys saw the last
Yes, I did.
show, which was amazing.
It was.
They're including different elements. They're taking a lot of the guys that can no longer fight in the UFC because they're not at that contender level anymore, but they're still fighters and everyone wants to watch them fight. That's
Tito
getting
paid big bucks to get tapped out.
There's a bunch of guys that come from the UFC that need a home.
Right.
And these guys, you got to remember, if you lose 2 to 3 fights in the UFC, you're out. You're gone. That's not that many fights. I mean, think about racing. Can you imagine if you just lost 3 races and you couldn't race anymore?
And you're fighting all top-notch people.
The best of the
you
best.
You can lose 3 fights in a row.
Done.
Underdogs who want it too, just as much as you, and they're willing to put more on the line.
Sure,
almost,
and it does happen. So the one cool thing about Bellator is the fact that they allow and they give these guys a chance. And you get these awesome matches where you know the names and you know the people and you want to watch them fight. And then they're including the kickboxing element too, which is super cool because for people that don't want to see any grappling or don't want to see any wrestling, it's 100% action and they're living side by side, which is really, really cool. And then you got the UFC though, which is now becoming, a premier sport. You know what I mean? It's one of those things where you're seeing athletes that are striving to get into this organization to make it to the top, to the championship level. And if they make it there and they do that, they are the best in the world. They just are. I mean, you look at the level of competition in the UFC and you see those athletes, they are the best in the world. So you're seeing 2 totally different organizations live by each other, doing totally different things. And that's why we like it, because we need both of them. You need an event that has some of these great names that people still want to see fight, yet they're still putting on great productions and you could see them on Spike TV and all that. And then you need to have the other organization that's getting guys to strive to be the best, the champions, right?
Now, Rick, I compare that kind of to the Lucas series and the Torque series. You can't just have one big show. You have to have 2.
I would disagree with you there. I think that there needs when it comes to off-road, that Lucas has a way of wanting to control everything, and then Torque has a way of doing it. And I don't think either of them are absolutely right on par. But when it comes to this kind of stuff, I mean, Hans, don't you feel that almost you have to be not just a fan, but understand the sport now to watch?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because the guys are so good. If you're a casual fan, they're boring.
Because I mean, the days of the evolution of the tough man to the basically,
right.
You're having the tough man, and then you had the segregated, the Muay Thai guy versus the Jiu-Jitsu guy, and then you had the domination of all the wrestlers that came through because nobody could figure out how to stop them. And
Dan Severn.
Then you had this culmination of people going, we got to learn it all. Right. And that's what MMA really is. It's mixed martial arts. So everyone came through and they refined, and you have athletes that, before you would have to be at least a black belt level in jiu-jitsu, to get in there, and you're the jiu-jitsu guy. Now you got guys that aren't even belted, but they're so skilled at what they do, and they understand how to fight that they could get in the UFC. But the fans have to be just as educated.
Yep.
Because if you're watching a UFC fight and you have no idea what a Kimura is, or if you have no idea what a guillotine is, or if you have no idea what what a spinning elbow is,
rear naked choke.
Yeah, these are just it's like watching a football game for the first time and not having any idea what's going on.
Well, but that's where I think Joe Rogan does a great job of explaining it. And like when with BJ Penn and George St. Pierre, and everyone knows that BJ was knocking people out. For not a big guy, just had bricks, cinder blocks for hands. And so what did George do? Held him against there, made him just basically tied him up and wore his arms out.
Yeah.
So now he changes the fight. And so that's the thing, that if you're just sitting there watching, going, get off the fence, I want to see a big knockout and stuff like that.
That's all part of it.
Right, it is.
That
100%.
is the game plan.
And I appreciate it, and I enjoy it. But when I was talking about earlier, we were off radio, the UFC 2, 3, and 4, like you said, the elevation from tough man to a jiu-jitsu guy and all the different stuff. It was some crazy fighting.
I mean, that was just fun. You know what I mean? That's that one part of you that you go, oh, I just want to see a train wreck. This is going to be crazy, And then, it becomes a sport, and you're like, okay, well, this guy is, this is going to be, you can't tell who's going to win because they're so good,
Right.
And that's what's cool about it now is that, again, you have the UFC that has developed this system of, amazing athletes, amazing top tier athletes that could go and ironically, Nick Diaz, right? And many people don't realize this, but that guy is a triathlete, and he is one of the best athletes in the world.
Yep.
Not just fighters, athletes. And he can go and he could do triathlons, and he could do different types of running races or whatever. And he's a top tier athlete, and that's what the UFC is breeding right now. Is the mentality that if you want to be in this organization, you got to respect our rules, and you got to respect the fact that you have to train hard. And if you show up and you're not going to be ready for a fight, you will get punished by your opponent.
Yeah.
And then obviously, like in Nick's situation, if you show up and you fail a drug test, you're going to get punished.
Right.
And that's the thing is that there are rules, and you accept those rules when you sign that paper and that contract with them. And unfortunately, if you don't own up to them, there are sacrifices that are going to be made.
Hans, thanks so much for coming on the show. We could go on for hours. We're going to have you back here soon. Where are you heading next, and where can people follow you online?
You can follow me at Hans Molenkamp. I'm pretty much on Instagram and all the normal social media feeds. Just HANS.
Next big event you're going to?
I'm not traveling for a little bit. I'm going to make it out to Chandler's fight. That's the one I'm going to. Well, actually, before I say that, we actually have a huge event that we're doing at the Monster Cup. We're doing a fight. Last year we did it. We're going to do it again with Bellator, and it's at the actual Monster Cup. And we put on fights.
You'll be there?
I'll be there.
We'll see you there.
Yeah, it's going to be amazing, and you guys need it. You guys are going to sit in front row. You're going to make sure the blood hits you guys in the face.
Awesome. Hans Molenkamp, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to have you back soon. We're at the halfway point already. Woo! Where has it gone? I don't even know. But hey, when we come back, we're going to have a special call-in from Dan McGranahan. He's hanging out with Travis Pastrana all day. Some cool stuff going on there. You're not going to want to miss it. The Action Sports Show powered by Toyota Escondido.
Ruin your good name. Take money for your shame. And we're all entertained. What can you do?